the September 27th meeting, and it's appropriately named, not because that's today's date. The first item will be pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements? I forgot to ask for that before we start. Okay, we started. Now, additions to the posted agenda. Does anyone have any suggestions of additions to the posted agenda? Anyone have subtractions to it? No. Okay. Next is public comments. If you're watching or you're sitting here, you'd like to make a comment, not on anything that we're going to talk about during the meeting, but anything that might be of interest to the township and the residents. Okay, seeing none, I guess I see none. We have a presentation and public hearings, and the first one is on the proposed rezoning at 160 Clearview Avenue.
So Leslie, you want to take that?
Absolutely. Do you want me to project or you do want to project?
I think Larry's going to do it for you.
Perfect, that's great. Okay. Back in May, Patton Township received a request from HFL Corporation to consider rezoning 160 West Clearview Avenue. It's currently the, well, it was formerly the Seven Mountains Media radio station location. Next slide, next slide. Oh, do my PowerPoint?
No, here's the
Oh, that's okay. We'll go off of this.
Do you want
Next page.
No, it's-
sharing capability?
No, it's okay. Well, I'm just going to do a quick summary.
Next page.
So the site is, it's a 2.5 acre parcel.
There you go.
And the report says that it's currently owned by Seven Mountains Media LLC, but that has recently changed as of July to HFL. They have proposed to do a 55-plus affordable housing community on the site in the form of apartments. And the parcel is neighbored by the Bryn apartment complex on the southeast boundary. There are 2 single-family homes to the adjacent side yard, and there's 1 single-family home across Clearview Avenue to the northeast of the boundary, or to the northeast of the property. So the property is on the corner of Waddle Road and Clearview Avenue. It's a heavily traveled corridor. Waddle Road, I should say, is a heavily traveled corridor. Just a little bit of background. The property was originally part of a 435-acre farm. It was developed in 1965, and this parcel was pulled off for a broadcast station back then, and then the adjacent land was subdivided into single-family lots, which is the way that the Clearview Avenue is shown today. The property is not consistent with the adjacent land use. It is currently zoned R2. The request is to zone it as R3. And in doing so, it would be consistent with the adjacent property, the Bryn.
You want to go back?
No, sorry. Do you mind if I share my screen? I threw a couple of extra maps in and I'm missing them.
I can see
so.
if I can figure out how to let you share, do you know?
Yeah, just let everybody share.
I know that Zoom doesn't always work with PowerPoint either, so I apologize for the delay.
Probably be okay to share now. Try.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. There we go. Let's see where we are. Okay. All right. The current site, as it was laid out, had approximately 13% impervious coverage. The site was a one-story building that looked to be CMU construction with a parking lot that had approximately 22 spaces. Here's a couple pictures of the view from the parking lot looking southeast towards the Bryn apartment complex. You can see it in the background there. Oops. Here is a view looking towards Clearview Avenue from the rear of the parcel. This is the Seven Mountains Media building. Here is a view from the existing building from the front door of the Seven Mountains Media site looking northwest towards Clearview Avenue. So you can see those single-family houses that are across Clearview Avenue that line that street. They all have similar setbacks, they all have similar footprints, and they all have the same lot size. Here's a view from the entrance drive of the property looking southwest towards Atherton Street. Again, the Wattle Road corridor is a heavily traveled corridor. Here's a view from the parking lot looking southwest towards Wattle Road. There is a steep embankment between Wattle Road and the majority of the grade of the site. So I just want to notate that now because that's going to come into play in a minute. Since it was subdivided in 1965, and it was previously part of a 345-acre farm, there's been a lot of changes to the road infrastructure since then. This is a map that we found that shows University Drive Extension. It's this road here at the bottom, if you can see my cursor. That is now Viro Boulevard. And you can see the original farm buildings here. So the Seven Mountains Media location is up here in the corner. This is Clearview Avenue here. And here's all those single-family parcels that were developed. This is now Wattle Road. That wasn't even a road back then. The neighborhood is very sensitive, so we want to be thoughtful of that during this rezoning process and any site plan submittals that would come after we make decisions on whether this should be rezoned or not. There are a variety of uses that surround the parcel. It is very centrally located. It does have access to public transit, and it does have ample access to multiple parks. The physical features of the site, the topography, the change of grade is really minimal. It's approximately 18 feet total between this upper corner here along Clearview Avenue and all the way down here, closer to the Bryn apartment complex. Again, the only significant grade that would cause any issue would be right here along Wattle Road. I showed you that picture just a few minutes ago. There would be a challenge there in trying to incorporate a sidewalk at grade with Wattle Road if this property were to go through the land development process. The vegetation of the site, it's predominantly covered with a perennial grass seed. There are some ornamental trees throughout the site. It looks like there's flowering crab apples and some other type of fruit trees. There is a pretty heavy evergreen buffer between the single-family residential to the corner of the site and the Seven Mountains Media property. There's also some ornamental pampas grass and some barberry and yews that were used as foundation plantings and along the parking lot. As far as infrastructure goes, there is a 6-inch lateral for sewer that services the property. There are also 12-inch and 8-inch mains that run along Clearview Avenue. The power is serviced by aerial poles, and the only change that would need to occur if this was upgraded to an R3 residential zoning district, or if it was, if they would build a max out for R2, the sewer lateral would need to be upgraded. There is capacity for the water, sewer, and power to service the site. As far as crash data, we pulled down a couple of different resources. Chief actually helped me with some of this. There were 2 reportable crashes between 2015 and 2019, and then between 2020 and 2023, there were 4 reportable crashes in the vicinity of this corridor. Wattle Road varies in width and right-of-way along its length. It has a variety of uses, and the sidewalk is not consistent. Wattle Road does link the Toff Trees development and and Viro Boulevard, so that Walmart commercial district together. And it has a variety of office, residential, and business uses along. It also has the I-99 interchange, which is important for access. Now, Clearview Avenue is much more residential. It also varies in width and right-of-way, but this road is predominantly single-family, one-story dwellings with garages. The setback, as you can see, is 30 feet, and it's consistent. There is not a consistent sidewalk, and we did have commentary from a lot of residents that say they walk right down the middle of Clearview Avenue because it's just a pleasant place to walk.
Excuse me, could you just repeat that last sentence? You said I couldn't quite hear. You
They-
had
I'm
comment
sorry.
from residents.
The residents made some comments about walking in the neighborhood, and because there's no sidewalks adjacent to the street, they usually walk in the roadway.
Right, okay, that's,
So actually, we had a couple of comments about walking in the roadway and how pleasant it was, but we did have one resident that had commented about people walking in the roadway.
okay,
So-
thank you so much for repeating that.
Of course. So this links between North Atherton Street, which is where the future Patton Crossings is going to be, and Oakwood Avenue, and it traverses through various developments, mostly through the Woody Crest development. I had some assistants to run some very rough traffic counts. As a radio station, the average daily trips forecasted would be 80 trips per day. If it was built out, so if it was not rezoned and it was built out for R2, it would create approximately 9 single-family dwellings based on the acreage. That would generate 90 trips per day. If it was built out, if it was rezoned to R3 and it was built out at the max, it would allow between 9 and 12 dwelling units. There's some issues with trying to get circulation for traffic and such in there. So that would generate between 90 and 120 trips per day. If it was, as proposed, to do a 55-plus affordable housing, and it was a multi-unit mid-rise, it would generate approximately 140 trips per day. But if this was senior housing, that would be significantly less. If it was rezoned to R3 and someone came in and built townhomes there, you could get approximately 31 townhomes on the site, and that would generate approximately 210 trips per day. So as of right now, the average trips are about 80, so that's the comparison. It's somewhere between 90 and 210 if this was built out at R3. Oops. As far as vehicular circulation, the entrance drive would need to be relocated as far away from the intersection of Waddle and Clearview Avenue as possible to prevent any major conflicts, especially with turning movements. Regardless of how this is designed, if it's townhouses or R2 residential, you can only have 25% max impervious coverage. That includes building footprints, and that includes any sort of entrance drive or gravel driveways, anything like that, or gravel parking pads, anything like that. If it was built out for R3 for either R3 single-family houses, or if it was built for a multi-unit, which is what's proposed, the 55-plus affordable housing, they can build up to 35% impervious coverage on the site. Because of where it's located, the parking qualifier is 2.3 spaces per dwelling unit, so just keep that in mind. As far as pedestrian and bike amenities, they are limited. There is a sidewalk along Waddle Road, as you can see in the yellow, but it stops right at the corner of the site. Again, there is a grade here, which would cause a little bit of a challenge trying to fit a sidewalk in along here, but it is possible. Clearview Avenue is shown on the bike plan as being a future corridor for a bike path, so there's an opportunity there, and there's also ample opportunity to improve the crosswalk situation. There is a church located over here. That's really the only change. So you have residential all along here. Walmart is right down here in this location. You have the Seven Mountains Media parcel here. You have the Bryn apartment complex here. And then all of this back here is all residential, all single-family residential. Oops. As far as services, it is serviced by all of Patton Township's normal services for police, Patton Township services at Alpha for fire, CenterLink, there's Center Lifelink for EMS, and then there's multiple opportunities for schools, specifically the State College Area School District. that service this site. As far as public transit, CATA does have a Atherton connector route that does service this property. It's a 32-minute trip between Geisinger Scenery Park. It traverses Atherton Street with a couple of side jaunts, and it runs to Colonnade Boulevard where it repeats its course. So when you're looking at the existing zoning for R2, the definition that is in the ordinance is the purpose of this section is to regulate residential development of low density on lots of sufficient size to provide for on-site sewage disposal and water and off-site sewage disposal and water. In addition, this district will enable the creation of a buffer zone between rural sections and higher density residential sections. So that's what the definition of R2 zoning is. The definition for R3 zoning is, it is the purpose of this section to regulate residential development in those areas near major highways. Remember, I mentioned I-99 and Wattle Road as being a significant corridor. Commercial areas, and it's near commercial areas, and or centers of employment, which it is. Such areas are suitable for medium-density residential development, provided that off-site water and sewer services are provided. They are. However, restrictions are provided to maintain suitable areas of open space between residences to create a suburban atmosphere adequate for family needs. So if you're looking at this parcel and trying to decide which zoning district it fits into, those are the two definitions to compare. As far as your uses, this is important. R2, which it's currently zoned, allows for single-family, group homes, and essential services. So essentially, if a developer would come in here and keep it as R2, you would be building approximately 9 single-family homes on this parcel. If it was rezoned R3, medium density, you could build single-family, group homes, 2-family, semi-detached, duplexes, apartments, and essential services are also listed. I think it's easier to read this in your packet, but this is a comparison as far as lot sizes, what the maximum impervious coverage would be, what the parking space requirements would be, and all of that goodness. Now, R2 is the yellow on the left, R3 is the orange on the right. One of the things that we always ask is this rezoning request consistent with the comprehensive plan? And the answer to this question is a little bit complicated. So the existing comprehensive plan, it meets multiple goals from the 2013 goals and objectives. However, in the map, the future land use map, it is shown as red, as shown on the screen here, meaning that the future land use was proposed as commercial or office space. So it is consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, but it is not consistent with the future land use. So that makes it a little more complicated. So in summary, as I went through this pretty quickly, there are whoops. Did you do that?
No, I didn't do it.
Okay. Well, in summary, there are quite a few issues that need to be discussed about the site, but the basics are the site could withstand R3 residential zoning from the perspective that there's absolutely no neighborhood physical features, infrastructure, services, or zoning that would prohibit an R3 or impede an R3 use. But the comprehensive plan, although it does meet the goals and objectives, the future land use is inconsistent. So with that, staff did recommend that the R3 medium density residential zoning request be approved. The Planning Commission did have conversations about it, and there was a lot of discussion from the public. The conversation was tabled in August, and it was reevaluated in September, and they did recommend to approve it to you with a split vote of 5-2.
And just one other thing to note from the Planning Commission's discussion, they did discuss the idea of the small area plan that we had discussed briefly, looking at some long-range planning for this area. So the idea behind the small area plan would be that you engage the residents that live in that area, and you talk about what they want their neighborhood to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And you also would have an opportunity to work on addressing some of the concerns, because they're all very valid concerns that the residents brought to us about the traffic, stormwater, certainly the character of their neighborhood. So the Planning Commission was very receptive to that, as I think you had initially been receptive as well. I will say it's kind of weird because in a perfect world, we would have done the long-range planning, the small area plan first before something like this happened. But we have the rezoning request in front of us. There is absolutely no timeline associated with the rezoning request. So if the supervisors choose to take action tonight, you're taking action to send it to the Center Region Planning Commission for review and recommendation. If they look at it, it will likely be their November meeting. You likely wouldn't see it again until the beginning of next year to take formal action on it. There's requirements we have to do with notification and posting of the property and advertising and things. So it's a conversation that you can have as long as you want at this level. You don't have to make a decision tonight if you don't feel ready to make a decision. You certainly can make a decision tonight if you want to, and that decision is just to send it on for more discussion at the Center Region level. The small area plan, I think, is something that we would like to pursue regardless of what happens with the rezoning. And that's an initiative you will likely see us undertake in 2024, if the board is fully supportive of that. But that's something we'd like to continue to move on if possible, because I think, as her analysis does a great job of explaining, that's an area that's in transition. You know, that's an area. I talked with Phil Park the other day. He had emailed me, and he talked about how that area has been in transition for a while now and has changed. And so we need to really look at long range what's happening, and especially with the other end of the corridor with Toft-Trees West and Toft-Trees Resort and some of the other things, and how they all fit together.
If anyone's interested, by the way, in going back farther in the history before it was Seven Mountains Media, there's going to be a talk about the history of radio in Center County at the mansion at the base of Porter Road on October 15th. A little presentation on that. Okay, we don't really have a public hearing on this, but I will allow any comments from anyone here or watching it. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Excuse me, got a bit of cold. I've been here twice now with...
Have her identify herself.
Can you identify
Oh, I'm
yourself?
sorry. I'm Kathy Durr. I live at 1780 North Allen. I live in Coventry Place down the street from this new proposal. I think we've all discussed a lot concerning traffic, stormwater, and the character of the neighborhood. I would say with traffic numbers that were given tonight, I would think they were probably low, because most of us who live in that area find alternate ways. We don't go out at that light. It's usually backed up or takes a long time. But one thing that was not addressed, because I've done a little bit more research since the last meeting, and that's looking at some of the developments of affordable housing that HFL has already developed in the area. And for example, two in particular, the Atherton House in College Township and Cherry Lane in Ferguson Township. And I realize we're not comparing apples to apples and apples to oranges, but with those affordable housing developments, there were retail businesses as part of that, like on the bottom level. And so my question then is, based on R3 usage and in Patton Township, is this something that's going to be allowed? No retail at all?
No, R3 right now only allows residential uses. And again, just for the board, and I think you all know this, but in terms of this request, right, we're not looking at specifically it's going to be a 31-unit attainable housing complex. We have to look at all the uses that could possibly go in as an R3 use, and all of them are what Leslie listed. They're all residential uses with the exception of essential services, which are utilities.
Correct. But can I ask then, under conditional uses, and this is from the Patton Township webpage, there are public uses and semi-public uses under conditional uses. What would they be? I just would like some clarification, because is that something, because really, once it's changed, they can do whatever they want within those parameters. And I'm just trying to understand that.
Correct. Conditional uses are potentially going to fall back to some items, like you're saying, what could be a conditional use? A public library could be a conditional use, or a private library. Somebody could have some other type of entity, a church. Those are conditional uses. We have a church across the road that is in an R2 district, but that was put in as a conditional use because those are permitted uses that are, but they have to go through the planning process.
So no retail, no
There would be-
Starbucks
no.
or Dunkin' Donuts in there?
There would be no retail permitted at all.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just make a comment really quickly?
Of course you can.
To Kathy and to others who, thank you for speaking and bringing your ideas to us. This is the first time that this particular board has been presented directly with comments. So they are available on the Planning Commission. So you can consider that it's new to us. I try to watch the Planning Commission meetings, but I don't always get around to it. I speak for myself, so thank you.
Joan Bouchard on the Zoom has her hand up.
Joan, go ahead. Is she muted?
Yeah.
Okay, and, wait a minute, I want to put the video on too. There we go. Okay, I would like to say that I am glad that you are considering this application, because I do like the idea of having some kind of sustainable housing, either for the families of teachers who can't afford to live in town. Their kids go to school in Penns Valley, but they teach in State High, and their kids don't get a chance to go to this school system, which is notably better than the others. And I'd like to see the people who are at the village at Penn State, which is where I live, be able to live closer to where they work. Almost all of them, except for the students that we have working for us part-time, live, 30 minutes to 45 minutes drive away. And that's okay for people who are, housekeepers and servers, but would be really good for people who are maintenance people to be able to live close enough, and medical staff to be able to live close enough to be able to be there within 10 or 15 minutes instead of 45 minutes in case they're needed for some type of emergency. And just for the sort of record of overall view of what I see would be beneficial for Patton Township, we talk about a place for all, but we really don't have a place for all, because we don't have a place where people who are coming into town now can find some kind of affordable or sustainable or attainable housing, whatever you want to call it, because there's very little of it that's available. There's very low turnover in whatever private homes there are in that area. And I'd also like to say that if it should happen to be a use that was approved, if this zoning is changed, for elderly residents over 55, which I think, which is the current plan, it's walk to Walmart, a safe walk to Walmart and the other stores that are around in that whole complex. And if it's approved for smaller family townhomes or something like that, it would be consistent, I think, with the goals that Patton Township has to create a bike trail there on Clearview, which would reach out to the rail trail and the other bike trails that are going off of Overlook Park. And so this would be good and kind of a safe neighborhood for kids to go out riding their bike and, adults to go for rides on weekends and so on. So I am very happy that this is being considered, and I think those are some of the reasons that I would like to see this, because I do see the things that I've mentioned as consistent with the goals that we have in Patton Township. So, by the way, I live at 240 Lions Hill Road in the village, and I'm Joan Bouchard. So, thank you for listening.
And thank you.
My pleasure. I care.
Okay, who else would like to talk?
My name is Larry Parco. I currently reside at 100 East Clearview Avenue. My family and I are longtime residents of this neighborhood. We moved to 142 Clearview in 1960. Clearview Avenue wasn't even a township street. It stopped at Wattle Road. What would eventually become the media complex was not there. When it was constructed in 1961 for WRSC, it was nothing more than a concrete block shed and a radio tower. In 1964, we began construction of what would eventually become the family homestead, as it were, at 100 East. The ambiance of this neighborhood has always been a major selling point. All these years, the addition of Comfortry Place only added to that ambiance. A calm environment with quiet streets and parks areas are important for families, especially those with children. The addition of this complex would severely impact the ambiance of the neighborhood in a negative way. Furthermore, as we had already discussed, traffic. There was talk at the last Supervisors meeting about conducting a study of the Wattle Corridor for both short and long-term future purposes, which I wholeheartedly agree. However, I believe this should be done before the rezoning request is approved. To do otherwise would be putting the cart before the horse. If it is ultimately revealed that this project would not have been in line with that study's conclusions and the request had already been approved, there is no way to turn it back. A major selling point of the Planning Commission's recommendations for approval seemed to have been that the developer would pay for that study after the request had been approved. Again, putting the cart before the horse. From a tax dollar standpoint, I totally agree. However, and more importantly in my opinion, what guarantees are there that the developer's study would be in the best and future interests of Patton Township and its citizens and not their own? There appears to be tracts of land and property at the other end of the Wattle Corridor. A complex such as this in that area would be much more in line with the overall environment of that area, not the Clearview neighborhood. Furthermore, there would be easier access to I-99. Therefore, I ask that this request be tabled pending the studies and its conclusions. Thank you. Any questions from any? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else thinking of talking and not sure they're actually going to talk?
Joan Bouchard has her hand up again.
Oh, okay, Joan, yes. Sorry.
Carry on, Joan, I'm sorry.
Okay, the previous speaker let me realize one other thing, which I hadn't taken account of when I was making my original presentation, and that is that older people get rid of their cars. So if it turns out that it's going to be a 55-plus type of development, I would like to see fewer parking spaces and some bike parking spaces, because I'm living here in the village at Penn State, and by the time people get to 75 or 80, depending on their state of health or whatever, they may be able to go out and ride a bike, but they really don't care to have a car, or they can't afford to have a car. And you wouldn't really need one in that particular place, because you can walk to any place that you want to go, or take a bus. There's very good bus, and lots of us senior citizens use the cattle rides or the bus or whatever. So I'm not sure that the traffic problem would be nearly so bad, as people might imagine if it were 55 plus. So I just thought I'd add those couple of things into here. I think we really do need more housing for senior citizens as well as, people who are professionals and serve us here in town. Okay, and thanks for listening to me again.
Thank you. Sultan?
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion, and I guess that was a curiosity that I had too, that the gentleman, I apologize, I forgot your name, had brought up, and maybe this was already discussed earlier. Why not do the small area plan first before approving the rezoning?
So one of the conversation pieces that we had at the Planning Commission meeting, and again, Mr. Parco is right, in a perfect world, we would have done the small area plan first. It's a cart and horse, chicken egg kind of situation. But one of the discussion pieces we had, and Bill Burnett on the Planning Commission, I think, spelled this out pretty well. If we were to do the small area plan, again, you don't have to act on this rezoning in a time frame, right? There's no timeline associated. So if you say, okay, let's hit pause, the small area plan is going to take us probably 9 to 12 months easily to get done. I think in Ferguson Township, they did one, it was probably about a year until they finished theirs, same in Half Moon and Harris. So that probably delays the project to the point that HFL might look at saying, okay, we don't really want to sit on a property and not be capitalizing on our investment. So they turn around and decide, okay, we don't want to do this property. And then in the meantime, we have someone who comes in and decides there is commercial right around the corner from this property, and comes in and says, okay, I'm going to put in a rezoning request to rezone it commercial. And then that opens the door to a whole host of other uses that could possibly go on that property. So delaying it possibly invites in other rezonings, right? That you could look at and say, we wanted to create this nice buffer, but then in the interim, someone came in and wanted commercial, and we couldn't really wait any longer. We had to move on it. So we don't want to lose the opportunity to direct where we want this to go, but also to not lose the opportunity of having something that's residential and not having someone come in and say, I'm going to put in the new Wawa right there, or the new Sheets right there, and rezone it commercial to fit that corridor.
And this is just me being naive and curious, trying to learn. But technically, at that point, we can still deny that request for something commercial.
You can deny that request, yes, you can. I will say it's, in that corridor, it's interesting, and that's something we talked about, Planning Commission level, and also staff level. It's interesting because you have the mix of commercial office, you have the commercial office buffer there, you have commercial across the street with Walmart, and you have the residential uses. So you have a little bit harder of a time going forward and denying some of these things, unless you can outright say, it doesn't fit at all, and I'm not sure you can make that case.
And if you remember, I mentioned that the future land use in the comprehensive plan shows it as office commercial.
Yep.
So it would, if you got a request to rezone it commercial, it would be consistent not only with the comprehensive plan, but also with the future land use plan. Does that make sense?
One thing that concerns me on this is that if they build the intended use for seniors, then I'm comfortable with it, because you're unlikely to have a rowdy scene there. That's not the case, though, if they change their minds, which they'd be allowed to do, and build a different type of R3. And we have no control over it. It's the same thing like when a developer wants to build a new place and they want to clear cut the trees. They're allowed because every zone in Pennsylvania can be considered as a forest zone. We can't stop it. That's just one thought. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud too. So technically, there has already been a plan conducted, and really what that looks like is commercial in that area, long range.
So back in 2013, when the comprehensive plan was done by the Center Region Planning Agency, they came up with what the projected future land use would look like, so that as things were growing and changing, that you could determine whether it was consistent with that plan or not. It made it a little bit more palatable if there was change occurring, if it was consistent with that vision, if that makes sense. So we are due to update the comprehensive plan. I can't say for sure if that property would still stay as commercial office space if it was redone, but as of 2013, that's the plan we're working off of. The comprehensive plan does show the future land use as office commercial. Now, back in 1999, there was a request to zone the corner of Colonnade Boulevard and Wattle Road from R3 to OBD. And then there was also a request in 2009 to rezone 5 parcels along Wattle Road from R3 to OBD. And that zoning request did not proceed. However, there were 2 parcels that were adjacent to the Hawbaker building that were subsequently rezoned I think it was the following year. So that corridor has been in consistent transition, and it's been a mix of commercial, a mix of office, and a mix of residential, mostly R3.
Congratulate you on a very thorough analysis. I learned a lot from it, and I thought it was a very good summary. Can you put this map up on the projector? I've heard all the comments from the citizens. I did see the recording of the Planning Commission meeting, the last one where they did review this before they submitted their recommendation. All your views are very valid, and I understand that. I mean, I'm a property owner too. I live in a residential area, so I understand your concerns about what transition and changes might occur with the neighborhood you've lived in, and many of you, for a very long time. But I also studied not just what the comments were from the Planning Commission, but I looked at what's happening here in this transition area. So this map shows you, this is I-99 obviously, and then here is Wattle Road from the I-99 down to Viro Boulevard. Here's the Clearview Avenue. What has happened so far is that on the east side of Wattle Road, from I-99 down to Viro Boulevard, there's only one single-family home left on the east side. You have, you have Texas Roadhouse, you have a big motel complex, you have a church, and then on Seymour Avenue, which is the one just north of Clearview, you actually have 2 apartment buildings, two-story apartment buildings, and the only residential single-family left is one right across the street from where the radio station was located. On the other side, on the west side, you have, Cracker Barrel, you have Hawbaker Corporation, you have 2 multifamily complexes, townhomes, and then, 2 or 3 single-family homes left. Ken, 2 or 3?
There's 2 north of.
2. So there are 2 single-family homes from Seymour Road to I-99. Now, of course, the rest of that block from Seymour to Clearview are single-family homes. But there's also a church right next to the corner of a single-family home lot on that side of Wattle Road. And then, of course, you have a big apartment complex here on Viro and Wattle, and then you have the big Walmart complex on the other side. So the transition that's been occurring is for this corridor to become non-single-family homes. That's one issue. The second issue I looked at was traffic. What is causing all the traffic on this Wall Road corridor and Clearview? Well, of course, obviously the shopping in Walmart. You have people coming from Atherton Street, North Atherton, who want to get to I-99. Well, they're going to use Viro Boulevard and then come up Wall Road, or Clearview. There's some more traffic drivers coming in the future. There's going to be a Penn Highlands micro hospital there right next to Cracker Barrel. There's going to be a huge growth in Patton Crossing over here on North Atherton Street. Those two will be driving new traffic patterns in this Wall Road corridor in Clearview Avenue. So unfortunately, what the future holds is not in any way to preserve the single-family residential character of the corridor. I'm not talking about back in here. Those of you who live back in here are benefit because there's really, you don't have a throughway to get over back here to this apartment complex on Viro Boulevard. It's possible, but Viro is the preferred route by those who want to go back to the student complex. So your single-family home residential area here, I don't see how that's going to change. That's going to remain single-family homes. So what to do about this? I don't see, this is my personal view, but I don't see that waiting for a small area plan and waiting a year is going to change it anyway. The preferred potential use of that corner. I would like to ensure that it remains a dwelling, whether it's multifamily or not, that at least that corner there will remain a residential area and not turn into an office complex or heaven forbid, some kind of a commercial space. So bottom line for me, I think it's appropriate for us to go ahead and approve the rezoning request to R3.
I have a couple things to say, but first I wanted to ask you, so why do you want it to stay residential? I'm just curious. Why do you want it to stay residential?
Well, we have residential right here. This is all R3, correct?
Yeah.
That's
I'm
all
not
resi-
arguing with you, I'm just curious, yeah.
Well, as I said, I think my preference is to keep that corner a residential corner and not let it turn into an office building or any other
Yeah.
commercial use.
And and that's, I was just curious. Yeah. So I'm going to preface my comments by saying that I just returned from Minneapolis, which is, as you probably know, is a city, but it's a very livable, walkable city. They're all very small homes. Thank you so much for that. Sorry. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So I just referenced a visit to Minneapolis, which is a very walkable city, very, very small houses. And I'm sort of, I also want to preface my comments with the fact that we're reading a lot about a housing crisis, not just here, but in this whole country. And not just affordable or attainable houses, but really just houses for people. So that's why I asked. I didn't know if that influenced it. And I think going back to the 2013, the Center Region Planning Agency, when they projected out a use for that, we did not have, or we were not talking about a housing crisis. Okay, and they projected that to become a commercial use. My personal preference aligns with Mr. Trevino's. I would like to see that housing remain. What I personally like about a walkable place, I just like to walk. I think it engenders more of a sense of community. I do not think that commercial and residential necessarily don't go together, because you see that in a walkable city, and you see that, I saw that all over in Minneapolis. This is not Minneapolis, I get that. But I loved that idea. I agree, I'd like to move quickly, keep it a residential. I love the idea of a small area plan. Who living in the Clearfield or Woody Crest neighborhoods wouldn't love to, walk down if there was well, I guess there is a Wawa now or whatever, or near the,
Heron Drive. Are you talking about the Wawa proposed one?
no, the one that's already there.
there's a
The Sheets, I'm sorry.
Oh, Sheets, okay.
Get those confused. So to a certain extent, Clearview and Woody Crest, do have some commercial places to walk to. You have Walmart, whether you want it or not, it's there. You've learned to adapt to that. So I guess it's a matter of what kind of development, and as several people have sagely said, we cannot control what goes there except in what is offered under the purview of an R3. But at least that is better than an OBD, which is
Office Buffer District.
Office Buffer District. I didn't know if the audience knew that, and I certainly have to try and remember it myself too. So at least that, again, that is my personal preference. And so I'm looking at what I hope it is in the interest of the people who currently live. It was a very walkable and accessible neighborhood. And I have walked along Clearview a lot. I don't find that very walkable, but I just, I walk on the grass when I can. So I applaud those of you who are, kind of taking back the street or keeping it your own, walking on it when you can, against traffic, whatever. Yeah, so I just wanted to assure, okay, no, I think I've had my question answered. I did have a question about doing the small area plan first, but I liked your, or I appreciated your assessment that we could lose that opportunity. We, just so you know, a little bit of history, several years ago we went through sort of planning angst, what I would call it, with the community when Patton Crossing was put in, and people in Park Forest did not want the change of their neighborhood. And we learned what we could and could not control in that zoning. So, but the important thing, I think, is to listen to citizens and then to not always do everything the citizens want. That we can't always do that, but I think it's very important to include that. And there's a lot of power. And actually, I will say that from that whole process, the board itself grew, not only in knowledge, but we grew in an actual board member who rose through that whole process of planning for Patton Crossing, and she being a resident of Park Forest, and she joined us on the board, Anita Tees. So there's a lot of power in that process. So I'm starting to ramble. I think I'll pass the mic.
Okay, well, what's everyone's pleasure and not necessarily pleasure, but what should we do? Should we have a motion to approve it? Should we deny? Should we discuss it again when maybe our fifth member is here?
I'm sorry. Just remember, if you approve it tonight, it's just to send it on to CRPC.
Right.
So it'll be back again.
Mm-hmm. Right. But that doesn't mean it would change then.
Right.
So I think this is an important crossroads for this plan right here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would like to go ahead and make a motion, as stated in the agenda. I don't have that in front of me. So if somebody else does, or if you want to make a motion, then I'll second it. I just don't have it up on my screen here, because I can't find it quickly. Okay, great. Yes, so I would like to make a motion that we support the rezoning request, which would be to change it to R3 and to move it to the Center Region Planning Commission for further review.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, but it's been moved and seconded
Thanks,
that we approve from our standpoint the rezoning and have it moved to the Regional Planning Commission. Further discussion?
Yeah, I appreciate learning, and obviously I appreciate the residents coming out, and I imagine, us moving forward with this. Again, no final determination has been made yet, but I imagine different reactions are going to be there, and that's valid, and I would encourage people to continue to come out and have conversations. I think for me, it's helpful, again, in understanding that there has been some long-range planning already taking place, and the way that things are evolving right now, especially even the traffic issue, understanding that that's even going to be significantly worse, regardless of whatever is placed in that area. And I would hope then that as we move through this process, having more clear, concise rationale for why we're moving in this direction. I think adding in what Supervisor Trevino had added, taking us through that was really helpful for me, in understanding that if we don't move on this at some point in the future, there's going to be a request that comes in that for something, particularly for commercial or something like that, which residents definitely don't want in that area. And so I think moving on this now for residential, makes the most sense. So if something could just be outlined so that ourselves and, the public is aware of why this is important, I think that'll be helpful. And again, thank you, Supervisor Trevino. That was really helpful taking us through that.
If this is approved, later we get to see a site plan.
So if the rezoning request goes through, that is separate from a submittal for a land development plan. So if the rezoning goes through, then they can submit a land development plan.
Right.
They can also wait and submit one once their funding comes through.
What I was hoping is that, and we may not be able to, is that when that site plan comes in, we do whatever we can to minimize the impact to the adjacent residential property, since it's the only one there that is in that category. I don't know if we can do that, but I think we should be sensitive to try to do that at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was also something the Planning Commission had discussed. Some of the traffic issues that we have now, we'll have the opportunity through this land development process to have a traffic impact study done and to look at mitigation then. We also have the opportunity to look at some of the stormwater concerns that were brought up as well through the land development process. So there is an opportunity there once a land development plan is received by the township to work on and making sure that we're not making the situation worse and hopefully doing something to make the situation better for the residents out there.
It's been moved and seconded and discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Which brings us to the Half Moon Township zoning issue again.
Joan raised her hand again.
Oh. Didn't see that. Joan, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Joan, I'm mute.
I'd like to say that I'm very proud to live in Patton Township. This is a wonderful example of how democracy is supposed to work. That's it. Thank you, everybody.
I moved into the village that she's talking about, and I tell my friends that I see a lot of old people there, and then I look in the mirror and I see another one. Half Moon Township zoning officer agreement.
So we tabled action on this at your last meeting because I think you wanted to have some more discussion. Nicole is actually on the Zoom if you have any questions for her. One item that did come up that we talked with Betsy about, and Betsy's at the end of the table today, was if there was some kind of a legal action around a zoning decision that, Nicole had made in Half Moon, how that would work out, if the township would be on the hook for that or if it would be Half Moon Township. And I think Betsy could speak to that if she wanted to. Just steal the mic. Yeah, you can.
So right now, obviously in a new agreement, we would address this more clearly if we have not done so already. But technically, they are hiring Nicole as a contractor, same as you're hiring an engineer as a contractor. The difference is that Nicole doesn't run her own business, so she wouldn't have her own necessarily liability insurance. So The township's responsible ultimately for the decisions of its appointed zoning officer, whoever he or she may be. And they would need to defend. If for some reason they didn't and we had to defend, they would need to reimburse us for those costs because this is our employee, no different than probably the agreement with our township engineer says the same thing, right? I'm making decisions on your behalf. You will defend those decisions unless I've committed, not malpractice, that's not the right word for an engineer, but some kind of malfeasance. So I don't think that's an issue. We can look at the agreement going forward and make sure that if it's not clear now, it's much clearer. But these joint zoning appointments, joint engineer appointments have happened routinely around the county. And so there's always ways in which the receiving municipality is responsible for that coverage. Does that answer the question?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
okay.
you.
Well, my opinion has not changed. I guess my primary concern about continuing an agreement is that we're putting our employee, Nicole Harder, continuing to put her into a difficult, stressful situation. I want to protect our employees and make sure they're happy with their job, and I don't want to give them a reason that they're not happy with their job that has nothing to do with how Patton Township is treating the employee. So I want to protect Nicole, one. That's the main concern. Secondary concern is that we learned last board meeting, she already has a ton of work to do for the township. She has a full-time workload for the township, our township, Patton Township. So why should we continue to split off some of her time to share with another township when it's clear we need to give her ample opportunity to complete all her Patton Township work successfully. So that's why I continue to advocate for us to allow our current agreement to terminate at the end of December and not renew it.
Okay. Go ahead.
And I'm going to argue from my perspective also, and I'm just going to actually turn perhaps those 2 points that Dan argued and turn them into questions to Nicole, because I think there's two ways that you can look at it. And actually, in fact, Nicole would ultimately have the decision whether to do that or not, or is that something that we as a township would decide
Whether to do.
to split her time between, or to have some of her time be allocated to Half Moon?
I mean, that's something the township would decide, and then Nicole decides when she's going out there based on her schedule.
Okay, gotcha. But it is possible, if it was not amenable to Nicole, or she didn't like it, and I think that's the reason that we're discussing it right now, is because she has some concerns, that her opinion would certainly allow me to make a decision in this. And so I just want to give Nicole that degree of freedom, because what is indeed, or certainly was, a difficult and stressful situation can also be looked at as a challenging opportunity. I mean, we've all been in stressful situations, and we grow from it. And then I guess the other question is really one for a manager and Nicole to discuss. Does she have the time to do that? So, yeah.
Nicole, if you want to answer Betsy's questions to begin with, that'd be great.
If you feel comfortable.
Sure. So
Sorry.
Betsy, I don't have an issue being the zoning officer for Half Moon Township. My issue is being put in awkward situations
totally.
where a supervisor is out of line and not following the proper procedures. As far as my schedule, like Amy had said, I schedule going to Half Moon according to what my availability is. So if I've got days in Patton where I'm booked solid, you know, it's kind of like when we were doing the ordinance review between myself, Amy Smith, and the planner, we all coordinated schedules to go. So scheduling is not an issue, but I wanted to make it a point that the stressful situations comes when I am put in a situation where possibly a Board of Supervisor member is giving incorrect information that he or she should not be addressing when it should be the zoning officer who needs to be speaking with the resident.
Okay. Thank you. Great answer. So I guess the ultimate question is,
To me, this makes
is that going to come up again, and would you feel comfortable, identifying immediately when it came up to remedy it, or do we feel that the discussion that we've had thus far would keep that situation from coming up again?
If I may just interject, the agreement you have with them now is not particularly broad. I think certainly one of the things we talked about at the last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, was an out. I think if something like that is in there, I think that can be an out. I think it can be an automatic out.
That was
I
my
mean,
next
I think
question.
you
Thank
can,
you.
can list, these are the things that will mean it's over, right? We've given you this window and it's over.
Okay, thank you, and that's where I was going.
We haven't heard one way or the other whether that behavior will continue, but then we don't know. I wouldn't have mind hearing from someone that it wasn't going to continue, but that.
Well, I'll just be honest with you as a board and say that the involvement of boards of supervisors in zoning, in road matters, in police matters even, in smaller townships with a less professional staff is not uncommon. They respond to constituent concerns, they react, they may or may not be appropriate, they may or may not be passing opinions, but I'm not excusing the behavior, but if you step out of the center region, and again, Nicole's in a very unique situation, but you're going to find that we've got supervisors in a lot of other places that you see on a regular basis that regularly give constituents advice. Sometimes they shouldn't, many times they shouldn't, but that doesn't keep them from giving advice. So I don't want to excuse the behavior because I think it's wrong, and clearly under the MPC it's wrong, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening.
Yeah, for me, a lot of thoughts. I'm trying to, again, scale back out and viewing this as Supervisor Trevino has, eloquently talked about. We have needs here in Patton Township. As far as like reciprocity, I'm wondering about like how this relationship is actually benefiting Patton Township, and if there's a benefit, I'll be open to hearing about that. But yeah, logically, it doesn't make sense to continue this relationship if, again, we have our own sort of like pressing needs that are there, and there's no perceived benefit, and things may just be more injurious anyway to continue this relationship. I'm wondering, to the sentiment of the rest of the board there. I know we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and I haven't actually heard like one way or another what the majority of their board actually wants. To me, it would have been noteworthy had they reached out in some way. I don't know if that would have been appropriate anyway, outside of just one person from the board reaching out. That would have told me that there was willingness to like compromise, that they appreciated, the services that we are offering. But I think the lack of the radio silence, I guess, from the majority of the board tells me that there just seems to be a lack of seriousness in maintaining this relationship. And so for me, I think I'm in agreement with. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense to discontinue moving forward.
Yes, I know that. I've been in conversation with you, yeah.
There's clarification.
Yeah.
One of their board members did reach out to us.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Yeah,
I
okay.
just mean as in unison, I think given the severity or, the severity of this issue, it just seems like a more robust response would have been
Right.
helpful as opposed to one particular member. Yeah. So is there a benefit to us, I guess, with this?
So I think, and Ken can speak better to this because Ken was the first zoning officer to go out there, but I think I remember when this was actually discussed because I was over on the other side of town then, but I think there was a desire at the time to help Half Moon because Half Moon had lost a zoning officer, I think, and didn't have a way to find. Zoning officers are not easy to find. Sometimes they end up being ex-police officers, but they're not easy to find and you have to train them. And Half Moon, I don't think had the ability to find someone to come in or couldn't find someone. So that's where this came from. It came from a desire for us to be a good neighbor to try to help them. And I think when this started, things were a little different in Half Moon Township than they are perhaps now. Supervisor Trevino is right. We've only heard from one elected official out there. We've heard from Amy Smith, who's their clerk and who's fabulous and really wants to keep Nicole because they work very well together. But we haven't sort of heard from the other four on the board. There's an election coming up. I'm not sure what happens after the election, if the sentiment changes. So I think this was driven out of a desire for for Patton Township just to be a good neighbor to Half Moon because that's sort of what we all do in the center region anyway. We try to help where we can. And from that standpoint, it's hard, right? Because Nicole has a great relationship with the staff out there and they work well together, but Nicole doesn't need to be put in, I agree again with Supervisor Trevino, she doesn't need to be put into any more stressful situations. And, that's absolutely our responsibility to look out for her as our employee.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that, and I think we're always willing and open to be, good stewards of Center County, but to be good partners with the different municipalities, and so we're always open to that. I think, again, the idea of respect, the idea of reciprocity is really important. And again, I want to zoom out from Nicole because I understand that when we take this action, I don't want retaliation or ill will toward a single employee because this is not her fault. And so that's why I'm really wanting to extricate her from this decision and thinking more broadly about just the position and our relationship with that. So again, my decision is not going to be based on Nicole. I personally feel like that's like an HR matter, and so as much as we've talked about that, I think that really this is not the place for that. So my decision not based on her, but more so on the general, the larger issues at play.
It's apparent, though, that Nicole's still concerned about this problem, and that Nicole is still concerned about this problem because it came up again tonight, and to me that says that we should go along with what Dan is saying, even though we'd like to be directly helpful to our neighbor, and we'd like to be helpful in the future, that we have to first be helpful to Nicole.
Mr. Chair, Joan Bouchard has her hand up.
Thank you for recognizing me again. First, I have a question. Does Half Moon Township reimburse Patton Township for Nicole's services in any way?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that's my question. My comment is that I've watched what's going on in Half Moon Township for 6 years now. The supervisors over there have a tendency to do arbitrary and very sudden changes of viewpoint, and there's changes of staff. And I know they have pulled out their funding from the library, they pulled out of the emergency response area district that they were a part of, and I think that really they're not good partners to be in business with, and that I'm afraid they'll get in some situation where Nicole would be involved, even though that's not supposed to happen. I'm uneasy about this partnership as soon as I heard about it, and I would like to, as a concerned citizen, I would like to say that, this is probably not worth the stress, and say that I would be against it. So thank you very much for listening to my comments.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I don't see you over there in the,
Question.
looking over that direction.
Pardon me, but I've forgotten the current terms of the contract. So if we decided tonight that we would not continue this contract, how would it end?
The contract is up at the end of this year, so we would
Okay.
just simply give them the 60 days notice that we're not going to renew the contract, and actually give them a little more than 60 days notice.
So it's interesting because in that interim, there also will be an election, and there may be a change, and there may be, at some point, for whatever reason, more than just one person communicating with us, one supervisor communicating with us. So if we decided tonight to essentially end the contract and give it 60 days, then somewhere down the road, if there is a change, either in staff, in the makeup of the board, either by person or by personality or mindset, then that we can revisit that contract.
The election that was less than 60 days from the end of the contract.
Yes.
Well, right, but if we decided now, it would still go to the end of the year.
Right.
And, they may have a meeting in December and or reach out in November, December, and then
I mean, I think
we
if
could
you
reconsider that.
I
Is
think
that
if
correct?
you're out now, right, if you decide tonight that you would like to be out, I think you'd be out for a year, and then you could decide next year, maybe if they came to us and said, if things changed and they came and said, look, we really would like your help again, we're willing to work with you to make this work with Nicole, then you'd reconsider for 25. But I think 24 would be like the cooling off period. We would not, if you're out, if you decide you're out for that year, just to let the chips lay where they're gonna lay.
Of course, 1 year is, saying 1 year, that to me is like arbitrary. Why not 11 months or
Yeah,
2 months
anyway.
or what's magic about a year?
6 months, yeah, it is arbitrary.
Yeah, I think I also keep coming back to, if we have more work to fill here in Patton Township, we might as well just have someone who's able to devote all their time here. To me, I understand that, Nicole had said they could get some work done within 3 to 4 hours, whatever that limited time frame is. Again, to me, that just seems arbitrary, in my opinion. So they can figure it out.
Half Moon Township is not restricted to applying to Patton Township to share a zoning officer. There are other townships that neighbor Half Moon. In fact, they could reach out to a township or a borough that's not even contiguous with Half Moon Township to share, a zoning officer. So it's not like if we don't renew our contract with them, it's not like they have no other option.
Right.
They have plenty of options.
Right.
So I don't think it's our responsibility to worry about how Half Moon Township is going to fulfill their zoning officer needs.
So should we have a motion then?
Yes. Some kind of a motion would be great.
Mr. Chair, I will move that we not renew our contract with Half Moon Township when the current agreement expires at the end of December.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes
Nay.
unanimously.
So I was delayed, nay.
Oh, you said no.
Right. So
Oh.
it passes, but not unanimous.
Okay, so it doesn't pass unanimously. All right.
It passes.
Mr. Chair, may I request a brief recess?
Now, we're going to have a brief recess, and that's because of...
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for that request.
Turn it off, say that, turn it off.
We'll now resume the meeting with item 4, which is public safety. And we have a temporary use permit request.
Yeah, so we received a temporary use request from Housing Transitions to hold their Boots Band and Barn event on October 7th from 6 to 10 p.m. at 4082 Buffalo Run Road. That's an 11.70 acre parcel located within our A1 rural district adjacent to the intersection of Lower Julian Pike. We included information from Housing Transitions about the event in your packet. The event is their largest fundraiser for Housing Transitions. It's anticipating 150 to 200 people in attendance with a restaurant catering the event, a live and silent auction, a band, line dancing, and a mechanical bull. They will have potties provided, and parking is being proposed in front of the two barns, with traffic entering the event close to the intersection of Lower Julian Pike. And along with the temporary use request, they also submitted a waiver for the noise, as the event will end after 7 p.m. So township staff reviewed this. Nicole, I think, is still on the Zoom. Yes, she is. And the chief has also reviewed it. And the only concern is parking for the event, and they asked that you put a condition on the temporary use request, if you approve it, that there will be no parking of vehicles along Buffalo Run Road. So Nicole and the chief can answer any questions that you might have on this request.
Can we see this map on the projector? Do you have that?
Dan has another analysis.
Well, in the past, when we've had noise waiver requests, I've consistently asked that the neighbors, the nearby neighbors, be notified. In this case, the application arrives too late, too close to the event for this to occur, that the neighbors would be notified and that they would be able to comment to us, to the board, if anyone has any objections to that noise waiver request. So here is the property that is hosting the event. There are two barns here in this field that have been built since the satellite picture was taken. This is where the event is going to take place. The entry and exit from this field for cars that are attending will be right here. Notice that there is one house right next to the hosting property. There's another house up here, and there's one right there. Now, I presume the township has not notified those residents that this request has been made. Is that true?
Yeah, because we found out about this request actually from someone else. We found out about it
I
after the last
understand.
meeting, so we had to follow up with the property owner.
We have on the books a policy that noise waiver requests should be submitted no later than 60 days prior to the event.
Correct.
Yet, we, in my 7 years on the board, we have consistently ignored that policy and have reviewed noise waiver requests much closer to the event date. So that's one thing. I'm upset that we have a policy, but it doesn't matter that we have a policy because we violate it constantly. Secondly, I'm concerned about those three neighbors. They're not going to know about this until the music starts blaring, you know, from those speakers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me finish, and then you can speak. That way you can address any of my misconceptions and anything I'm not saying correctly. Now, I did notice from the information that the band is actually going to be inside the barn.
Correct.
So the speakers will be inside the barn.
Correct.
And you're not going to have any speakers outside.
No, we will not.
So they'll be in the barn. That's good. That will constrain the spread of the noise from this noise. It's not noise. It'll be music. It'll constrain the spread of the amplified music to primarily inside a building. That helps. I'm still concern. I guess I'm being the advocate for these 3 residences, that they should have been informed, and certainly they need to be informed in advance of the event. So it's not something suddenly, it's unexpected. Where's all that music coming from? That they're not aware of it. The second concern I have, I've already talked to the chief about this. I was out there earlier today. This section of 550 is actually a hill, a vertical curve. So from here, it goes up and then down. Cars coming from this direction, I guess that's north, cars coming from the north on 550 are going to come over that hill, and I'm worried about nighttime when the event ends. We're talking about 10 o'clock. You're going to have a whole passel of cars here leaving the event, entering Buffalo Run Road here. I'm worried about any cars coming in this direction who'll come over the hill and suddenly be faced with a line of cars exiting the field at night, in dark. Now, I understand you're going to put in some lights here, outside lights, to light up this area, because they're going to have some, the bucking bull is going to be out here, and some tables and that sort of thing. The chief assured me that if they think there's going to be any kind of potential safety issue, that he'll have a patrol, an officer out there with flares or something to alert traffic that might be coming over that hill. So that concern is taken care of in my mind. I am just a little upset still that we did not know about this soon enough that we could inform these neighbors so that they could speak to us if they had any issues tonight.
Yeah, I understand that you are concerned about the fact that we didn't enforce the 2-month thing.
We don't enforce the 2 months. That's what I'm worried about.
But this would be the first time that we didn't know about it, that people didn't know about it at all. Is that the
No,
first?
we've had other noise waiver requests that were submitted to us
Very late.
much later. But the last one I remember, I can't remember which one it was, we were able to actually send out notification. And then, because we tabled the request to the 2 weeks later, and the neighbors were notified.
Let's ask our fine manager to see if that gets enforced.
Yeah, we could certainly the event's coming up before your next meeting, but if you approve the waiver request tonight, we could certainly send, or you can make it a condition of the approval, that a notification be sent out to the residents around to let them know, and to make sure they have the phone number for the police if they do have any issues. We certainly can make sure that happens as well. And moving forward, we'll make sure that 60 days is being followed and folks are being notified properly. And I do believe we have an organizer of the event who'd like to speak, so why don't we let her.
Hello, I'm Amy Werner. I'm the Development and Community Relations Coordinator for Housing Transitions. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. I apologize, first of all, for not giving you the 60-day notice. I'm going to take responsibility for that. I never, ever thought about it, never even thought we would need something when it was on personal property, but now I know, so thank you. I have some good news that might make everybody happy about this. You're so good at that pointer, Dan. Can you use your pointer again to those houses? Because I'm going to tell you something. The house that's right adjacent to the property,
Right there.
that is actually owned by the Hafners who own this property. So they own that. That's
Right.
their property. That's their house.
All right.
The house across the street
Here?
is in a neighborhood called Cambridge Crossings. I actually live there, and I'm trying to do a really good job at my job. And everybody in our neighborhood got invitations, so they do know about it. Pretty close to 60 days before the event. I mean, if that.
Good.
And we are actually getting pretty good attendance from the neighborhoods around us. And then this house on the corner of Julian Pike, we also sent an invitation there as well. And then we sent invitations
Cedar Cliff, I think that's the right name of the one, and then all the houses between, like Buffalo Run Road and Cedar Cliff. So we did try to make sure that people were very aware of it.
Good, thank you.
And for the parking, we absolutely will not park any cars on Buffalo Run Road. Do you guys have any other questions for me? And we have Steve Hafner on the call as well, or on the Zoom, so he's the property owner with his wife Amy, and they could answer any questions that you have as well.
I do have another question, but it has nothing to do with whether or not we would approve it. It has to do with parking on that field, and we've had a lot of wet weather recently. You know, knock on wood, hopefully there's going to be a dry spell, and I'm sure you're hoping for the same thing.
Yes, I am.
So have you thought of an alternative parking solution if the field is too muddy, too wet and too muddy to put cars on it?
I actually have not, and I have looked at the weather, and it does look like it's going to be very dry, so that's a good thing. I would tell people to wear rain boots, but Steve, are you there?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just highlight a couple points. One, there is a grade there that goes down to the tributary to Buffalo Run. So the area that we're proposing to park is sort of on the top side of the grade. Therefore, you get the benefit in the event that we do run into some bad weather. We have hosted private family events in the past and never really had any issue in terms of the space available or any difficulties with folks leaving onto Buffalo Run. So I'm confident that I can't call the weather in advance, but I think that the property can hold up to whatever is necessary to host this event.
What is the date of it again?
October 7th. October 7th.
October 7th?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, my question, probably my biggest concern is that I didn't get an invitation. Is this open to everybody or just invitation only?
No, you can go to our website, housingtransitions.org, and you can buy your ticket tonight. And I'll send you an email.
Buy a ticket.
It is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun event, and the Hafners have are graciously allowing us to utilize their land and those beautiful barns.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, there's precedent to us not following the 60-day, and so I don't really see an issue outside of it being contingent upon, well, should we make a motion before I keep talking?
You can. I don't think anybody has.
Page 6,
Page 6.
top of page 6.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm making a motion that we approve the noise waiver and temporary use permit for a housing transition boots band and barn event
Is there a
occurring
second? Oh, sorry.
October 7th, 2023, contingent upon the township sending out notices to local residents.
And also that there's no parking on Buffalo Run Road.
And also that there's no parking on Buffalo Run Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Does the township need to send out notices now that we know that everybody's been invited, or?
Well, I still think it's incumbent upon us, like,
Yeah, we can
to
follow
make
up
sure
with
we
letters
do
to the
that.
property owners to let them know, that's fine.
Well, I already
Something I need to do?
That's something the township can do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I put in a request for no rain, and as everyone knows, my requests for such have no validity whatsoever. So, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's done.
Thank you.
Now we're up to Public Works Operations, which There are apparently no items. Now we're up to engineering, planning, and zoning, and there are also no items. However, we're now up to administration, and there appear to be many items.
Could be items.
There's some items, yes. First item, we're working on the capital improvement plan, so this is sort of last call if the board has any items that you would like us to consider including in the CIP. One thing I mentioned to Betsy, there is a community in Pennsylvania that has been designated as a Bee City USA, meaning it is a pollinator-friendly, it's like a Tree City USA, but for bees. So I'm going to put that in the CIP to investigate us joining Bee City USA next year, having some pollinator events, because I know Betsy is very excited about that.
Okay.
You need to come talk to the bees in my neighborhood, because they've been flying in my face. I've been sick of it.
We could be a Deer City USA too.
Okay. So now we're up to, we've done the administration.
We still have a couple more things.
Oh,
to
there
go.
are a couple of more things, that's what I thought.
Yes. So next up is just the resolutions for the Municipal League Summit, which is next week. Betsy's going to be Supervisor Whitman is going to be our voting delegate. So if you want to provide her with any direction, there's 9 resolutions that were in the packet. That would be great. I don't think there's anything controversial.
No, I read through them and didn't see anything that jumped out, except that I was excited about the resolution in support of community solar power. Yeah, it's very exciting for me.
It's a bright idea. It's a bright idea.
Very bright.
Okay, so that brings us to,
Speaking of bright ideas,
There we go.
it brings us to approve an additional legal fees
for the solar.
for the solar power purchase agreement. And this is prior to any legal fees that our distinguished solicitor will have for us in the future. This is still, just to give you a little background, we have chosen Prospect 14 as our solar power our solar power provider. They have some projects in Center County that we're hoping to get up and running. But before we get to that point, there has to be an agreement. There has to be actually 3 agreements. One agreement with Prospect 14, one agreement with Direct Energy, who is our retail side of it, and one agreement with Prospect 14, Direct Energy, and ourselves on how Prospect 14 and Direct Energy are going to work together. So we are currently working actually on all 3 of those agreements, but most of the work has been done on the purchasing agreement, the power purchasing agreement, the PPA, and Prospect 14's lawyers and our lawyers have been going back and forth, apparently getting enough money for send all their kids through college. It's not anything unusual when we start getting these negotiations that go back and forth and go back and forth. So, as you know, way back when we approved legal fees that we were going to pay, and then we approved a second round of legal fees. Now we're on a third round of legal fees, which that third round of legal fees are $30,000. Our portion of it should be no more than $500, depending on who stays in the PPA and who drops out. So it should be somewhere between $400 and $500. I expect, not only do I expect, I know that all that $30,000 is going to go like that, and we're going to have a 4th round that I'm going to come to you with. But we're negotiating with the lawyers to, with the attorneys to have a drop, no greater than amount, okay? It's not to exceed an amount. We're hoping that the next round is not to exceed 50,000. And we have an agreement with Prospect 14 that if we sign, we meet certain milestones, they'll reimburse us that 50,000. So we're kind of working both sides of them so that we can save some money, because we feel that we as the project management team and the working group feel that we've invested a lot of money in this. We're getting really close to the end, but this is when a lot of activity is gonna go back and forth. So it's where most of our expenses are gonna come in until we get a chance to see the agreements, and then we can make our decision. Do we want to sign those agreements, or do we want to drop out at that point?
Do we need a motion at this point?
We need a motion at this point to approve additional legal fees no more than $500 for me to pay.
So moved.
For us.
Patton Township, yeah.
Is there such a motion?
Hmm?
Is there such a motion?
Oh.
Yeah, Doug, Dan just made that motion.
Yeah, I move
Okay.
that we
Is there a
approve
second?
no more than $500 additional legal fees for the solar power purchase agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded then. Is there further discussion?
I want to, I was going to actually preface Larry's comments, but this is the perfect time to say it. So we opened up the meeting today with the person directing the technical, this.
Green Sky, the consultant.
Yes. No, well, I was thinking Peter Buck, so you're
Oh,
the.
Peter Buck, yes.
The working group.
The working
Working
group.
group.
Well, no. we're
Project
the
management group.
Project management. I got to write that
Team.
down.
Project management team.
So we're the working
PMT.
group. I can't even pretend that I know what the project management team is knowing. So I first of all want to just give my thanks and my kudos and admiration for Larry and the rest of the project management team that has been on top of this.
Yeah.
So first of all, what I experienced today was a lot of numbers, and I tried to follow them on the map, and I tried to follow them so horizontally, vertically, and it was like a big black box. Okay, so we all know the term big black box. What was very reassuring to me was that at the end of the meeting, when I went up to Peter Buck, who is the co-head of the project management team, and he said to me, this is like a big black box. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. So we all know about that. We trust the big black box from an airplane when it crashes. So at the basis of what we are doing right here is trust. I have the utmost trust in Larry and his colleagues on the project management team. I have sat in enough meetings and I understand the integrity and knowledge, or I have an understanding of some part of it, of the advisor from Green Sky. So I am choosing to trust what has been going on in this project management team, what's in that big black box. And I also want to try and capture the comments that Peter Buck led off with, that they're the reasons why we are joining the solar power purchase agreement, and there are 5 reasons. The first is the cost, and because of the volatility of the market, electricity, and there are some graphs and there's some data to show that this is a very good investment for us in terms of the economics, the cost. The second is it satisfies our climate goals. Those are very real to this board. They are very real to a large portion of this society. So those are 2 really very solid goals. The third one is that we are very concerned for the economics in not just our community, but the state at large. And there's a lot of evidence to show that this new technology coming provides jobs, it boosts the economy. That's not my personal concern, but it is my ethical concern. And the fourth would be the educational opportunity that we all are getting for this process. and the fifth is adding diversity on the grid, the electrical grid, which is actually critical. And I don't understand the physics of that, but I understand that it's important. Going back to the educational opportunity, I would like to think that that actually goes hand in glove with what we're doing here in Patton Township. A small part, which is educating. All politics is local. I believe that what we do here and what I do at my house, but just with a simple sign that says "Go Solar," I've already had 5 people stop. I've made a difference in people's lives, and this is occurring all over the center region. And as more projects like this go forward, it will grow like grassroots. So I just wanted to impart that perhaps extended and deeper meaning behind this. But my hat goes off to people who understand the black box and what's going on in here. Thanks.
I made some comments at the COG meeting the other night, but would have been helpful if the local matches, the local amounts had been put somewhere in writing in the presentation. All I heard was $30,000 changing to $50,000. And
oh, you mean
so,
what we were paying, the individual?
Yeah, they gave us that. I certainly can email them to you, if I can email them to the board, if you would like. But our portion, whenever you hear that number, think of 1%.
Yeah.
1.2%, that's what our portion is. So.
Of everything.
that would have,
Of everything.
I would have shut up before I even said anything.
Exactly. So whether we're in the project or not in the project, we don't make a big financial impact on it. We're only 1.2%.
Nor does it make a big financial impact on us.
Exactly.
And that's a critical thing.
Right. So, had a motion, we've had a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Which brings us to local planning services.
So as you remember, at our last meeting, the board voted to give notice to withdraw from the local planning program effective January 1st, 2025, and they talked about that at the general forum last night. And then we also voted to reduce the amount of our planning services in 2024 from 50% to 40%. And we made that decision because there's one local land use planner left, and that happens to be Leslie, who's our planner, and we're not confident we would be able to get 50% of her time just because of the nature of all the other municipalities that are still in the program. So after we sent the memo off to the COG and sort of explained why we were doing this, the executive director, Mr. Norenberg, sent a letter to the board asking that you amend your motion to stay in the planning program at the 50% level in 2024 and to utilize the established process of having funds returned in the next annual budget. He also referenced consistency with the Articles of Agreement. So I did a little digging and I talked with our solicitor, but I dug out the Articles of Agreement, which do not reference having to give a year's notice if you're going to reduce the amount of something you're purchasing, only if you're leaving. And also I found a letter that the township wrote in November 13th, 2013 to the Center Region Planning Agency and the COG at that time to let them know, because we had just lost our planner. We had 100% time and our planner at the time had left, that we were reducing our planning time effective starting January 1st, 2015, understanding it would actually take effect during 2014 because the COG wasn't able to staff our position. So we were dropping from 100 to 50%. So, and also this phantom refund that they discuss is not really a refund, like we're not going to get money back. It's they would amass a fund balance from services they can't provide, and then at the beginning of 2025 in the budget year, they would give a credit to everybody. They've been doing this for regional planning with the borough and Ferguson, because the borough and Ferguson and College only pay into regional, and there hasn't been much regional planning. So the borough, Ferguson, and College have been getting these big credits essentially at the beginning of every year, not a refund. So I talked with our esteemed solicitor, who's at the end of the table, and I'm grateful she's here tonight, about this, and she does not feel that the COG has actually any legal leg to stand on in trying to make us pay for something that we're not going to be able to actually get. So I don't think that you should amend your motion, but that is obviously your decision to make. And as Betsy said, if Betsy needs to send a letter back, she can send a letter back to the COG if we want to go that route. Whatever you guys want to do, but
Well, since I sent out the letter and I got the thing back, the reason I didn't do anything is because I wanted to hear what everybody said, and it doesn't look like we should respond, really. Or would you like me to respond saying no?
I mean, I would probably say that, but
I think from a budget standpoint, because they're gonna budget 50% of our planner, and they're gonna bill us based on that budget. I think we have to be clear to them that, no, we're not paying for 50% of a planner if we don't get 50% of said planner's time, okay? With the thought that I'm gonna pay 50% and they'll give us a credit next year. Well, that just means that they're gonna hold on to our residents, our taxpayers' money in their bank account, because they're not only doing that, they're budgeting a full year of all these other planner positions that aren't filled that we're gonna be paying for. Like she said, regional planners that are phantoms that don't exist at this point. They're empty offices that we're gonna be paying, thousands of dollars a year for, that they're never gonna pay the money out. So all that money's gonna do is go from our bank account to their bank account and sit in their bank account. I am not in favor, 150, 175, 200% not in favor of giving COG money to let them sit in their bank account.
yeah.
Okay, well, then it sounds like one of the two of you or both of you would be in an excellent position to draft such a letter.
Yes.
Yes.
We would be happy to
We
do
would
that.
be more than happy to draft such a
Which I would
letter.
be glad to sign.
I'm hoping that our finance committee member will bring up tomorrow during the planning budget talk, if we have it, that we don't plan on paying for 50%
Yeah,
if we're not getting 50%.
because they have us in the budget still at 50%.
Oh, of course.
And also, it's important to note, Harris Township, I talked with their new manager, and they said it last night at the general forum, actually, they're having the same conversation, and they're likely to go from 40 to 25. So are you gonna tell Harris the same thing, that they just, for the goodwill of it, you have to keep paying? Because I'm also of the mindset that I'm a little petty, and if they say we have to pay 50%, then I would like Leslie's smiling face in our office 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
And she better be in the office 20 hours a week, or I'm gonna start holding money in escrow and not paying what I owe them.
Well, if that were the case, though, you'd get some good work done.
Yes, yes, we would love to have Leslie in our office 20 hours a week.
We don't have any problem with paying for 50% of Leslie.
We love
Oh,
Leslie.
yeah.
If we get 50% of Leslie.
She's
But
all right.
unfortunately, I think Leslie's gonna be spread pretty thin next year.
Sounds like.
She's got 50% of her time here, 40% of her time in Harris, and 25% of her time in Half Moon. And I went to elementary school, and I can tell you that's more than 100% of her time. So I'm not sure how that's gonna work out.
Yeah.
And so, is it okay with the rest of the board if we authorize
Yes.
the writing of the letter?
Yes, we will draft the letter. If you want to sign it, Elliot, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll draft it and get
All
it
right.
together.
Great.
I mean, I'll write it if y'all want.
Sutan, if you want to write it.
To whom hear ye, to whom it may concern.
On the arithmetic question, though, there was a second grader. The teacher said, if I give you 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 squirrels, how many things will you have? And the kid says 7. And the teacher says, let me try that again. And it said, if I give you 2 lines, 2 squares, and 2 circles, how many objects will you have? And the kid says 6. And said, why did you say that the first time? And the kid says, duh, we already have a dog.
Okay.
Continuing right along.
I have a question about the procedure that COG has to go through to pay a planner. If we decide that we're not giving COG any money for any planners, but midterm they hire a planner. Where does that money come from for COG?
You mean, if we decide we're going to give them,
Just
if
40%.
if we pull out of local planning, we're out of local planning. So
We're not paying.
whatever they do for local planners, that's up to them, okay? However, if we pay 40%, and,
That I get. I just wondered.
okay,
I'm just thinking about
and
where-
they end up
where in
getting
the
some
budget.
planners, and we get 50%, I don't have a problem paying for 50%. I just don't want to prepay.
I
Yeah,
think
I hear you.
Betsy's question is what happens if everybody drops down and then they go out and they fill planning positions, how do they pay those planners?
Yeah.
And I think honestly, it's probably then they're gonna shift things over to other, like regional planning.
Okay.
And they do carry a fund balance, so they'll try to make that
So
work
it's just
within.
in the budgeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
but they're gonna have to budget knowing that they're
COG's
not,
got a lot of cash.
yeah, and they're gonna have to change their formula, and I think at the end of the day, they didn't wanna have to change their formula for planning.
Right.
It's easier to just keep it the way it was.
Change is hard. Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, then I guess we're up to consent agenda. Is there-
Oh, I move that we accept items in the consent agenda.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
I just want to note one thing, and that's just on the oak wilt. I sent you an email about it, but it's, the low bidder is the Delaware Environmental Construction Services at $8.99. They were able to give us the certification. They had transposed a number, so they gave us what we needed, that they are the qualified low bidder.
Transposed a number.
So, yes, so Nicole vetted that, so that they are the low bidder.
That was Delaware?
Delaware, yep, environmental.
Yeah. Did you see my email?
I did, I don't know if you saw my response.
No, I did not.
Okay, so Sutan had emailed me to ask about Cutting Edge, because Cutting Edge had bid, everyone else bid per diameter inch, which is what we asked for, because then we have the ability to pull things from the area if we need to, or add things if we need to. Cutting Edge gave us a lump sum amount, not a per diameter inch. And Sutan had asked, and it was a good ask, if we could go back and ask them to give us the per diameter inch price, but we can't, because under Pennsylvania bidding law, they didn't bid appropriately, they didn't follow the guideline, so we would have to, in order to do that, we'd have to just sort of reject all the bids and then start again. So we obviously don't want to get in that situation, but we can look at, for next year, I talked to Nicole, maybe doing it per diameter inch and also asking them to include a lump sum number, so then we can compare and see what the actual cost is. We could play around with that for next year.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's some type of warning or disclaimer on the application that if you do it incorrectly, then.
We can also look at that as
you're
well.
not
We use
able to-
PenBid, and I don't know how to use that at all, so.
Okay.
I think that specifies you have to follow the specifications of the bid. So if the bid says bid in quantity, you got to bid in quantity, you can't give a lump sum. And so it's pretty clear on PenBid, if you don't follow the requirements of the bid, I haven't seen these bid documents, but I'm sure they were specific. If you don't follow them, technically, we don't even have to go beyond looking at your bid. We can just throw your bid out and look at everybody else, so.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful to understand. And, yeah, I was thinking that as we move forward with projects, and Amy, I know you had talked about the idea of being more inclusive in this process and equitable, and if we're breaking down larger projects into smaller ones in order to get small businesses to be able to actually, participate in this process. I was just thinking about just knowledge capital and being able to actually navigate through this processes, and how the larger entities may already have better processes and knowledge in mind to complete these accurately. And so just wanted to make sure for those who may not be as well versed in this process that we have some type of consideration for helping to support them a little bit more. But thanks for the feedback.
Okay. So do we need a motion for this?
We have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second.
We already had motion and second.
We have a motion.
Yeah,
Yes.
to approve the consent agenda.
So I'm being a pain here, and I just say, take 2 aspens, sequoia in the morning. But all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Which brings us to an exciting portion of the meeting, which is the manager's report.
I mean, I feel like you oversell this. It's not that exciting, but
It is.
just a couple of things to mention tonight. First of all, we have been the lead project grantee for the Atherton Street Coordination Project. So we've been coordinating all the signals between here and Discovery Drive and Harris Township, minus most of the signals in Ferguson, which were already coordinated, and most of the signals in the borough, which were coordinated. So it's exciting because now they can be changed on a dime if there's an emergency or a Penn State football game or whatever, and they're collecting data off of them. The project came in about $400,000 less than the amount of the grant that we had. So PennDOT came in, I had a great meeting with them about how we still have $400,000 to spend by the end of next June. So we're looking at additional projects that we can add in that are signal projects on these signals through the corridor. We're looking at doing some pedestrian upgrades to 2 signals within Patton Township. One is the Colonnade in Atherton. The other one would be Douglas Drive and Hawbaker Industrial Drive in Atherton, where we had a pedestrian accident earlier this summer. And looking at some other projects throughout the other corridor to help out, changing out old controller boxes and things. So it's really exciting. We're also going to have the engineer go back now that we have data that they're pulling from the coordination to see if we can retime any of the signals so that they're talking to each other better. So hopefully that'll make traveling the Atherton Street corridor a little bit better for people. So that's ongoing. Next thing I put in my manager's report, our rep to the airport authority is going to step down. He's having some health concerns. We do have a resident, Greg Scott, who's actually the executive director of CBICC. He also oversaw the airport when he worked for the university previously, and he worked at the airport when he was in college part-time. Who's interested?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Which I've already let you know. Greg Scott is, as executive director of the CBICC, I think it's not appropriate for Patton Township to appoint him as our representative. I think it's more appropriate that Center County appoint him. Center County has 2 seats on the airport authority. I would prefer, and I'm just letting you and Betsy know, you're our 2 ABC committee, in terms of reviewing applicants. I would prefer that a Patton Township regular, plain citizen, regular, plain, whatever, be the person we appoint to represent Patton Township. And that Greg Scott role as director of CBICC, he has a vested interest in representing CBICC, not Patton Township in particular. So that, I'm just giving you my viewpoint.
What's the timeline?
George is willing, I think he'd like to step down sooner rather than later, but I think he's willing to kind of roll with it until we can find someone to replace him. But George is a hard person to replace. He's been incredible on the airport authority. He's an incredible human. But I can certainly see if we have other applicants. I did get Greg's applicant today, so I have that. So I can see what I can find out.
And what's the timeline for any opening at the county level? You don't know that.
I don't know. I can try to find out.
Yeah, but I think that would be appropriate. I
think that would still be, just speaking candidly, I think that would still probably be a conflict because of his role with an organization. I mean, I just think I have a feeling that would be the same view that the county would have. That is, they're like you, they want a citizen. The intent is to have a citizen on there, not that he isn't a citizen, that's my point. And I'm saying this now as a board member of the chamber currently. I just think it requires you to put 2 different hats on.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
I think does Benner Township actually have one of their supervisors who sits on the airport authority?
I do not know. It's possible.
I can't remember. I thought at one point there was, so, or maybe it's Bellefonte Borough that has a borough council member that sits on.
Yeah, I can do a little more digging. I'm very ignorant to who's on the airport authority.
Would you like to be on it?
I'll be on it. What I got to do?
Susan, you going to go to the
How
airport?
much time does it take?
I can find out for you. How about that?
Yeah.
Just all you have to do is airports and you wing it.
Wing it.
Okay.
Well, no, let's take that seriously.
Yeah, that is a serious.
Yes, I will. That's a great comment. Thank you, Dan. I did not think of that. So yes, I will do some more research and look into that as well. Okay, next up, the Center County Association of Township Officials Fall Convention's October 30th at Mountain View. It's always a fun time, and you win door prizes. So if you would like to go, there's dinner. Let me know, and I'll get you registered. Dan already said he was going. Sutan's in, he heard dinner.
What, golf and dinner? What?
There's no golf.
Okay.
This is the day before Halloween, right?
Yes, it's October 30th.
All right, I'll.
Elliot's in?
Oh, hey, why not? Let me check. We don't have a board meeting that night, do we?
No, it's a Monday.
No.
Monday.
And general forum is the Monday before, I take it.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Next thing, I've been serving on a small group subcommittee of the CBICC Economic Development Council. We're interviewing consultants right now to pick someone to do an economic development strategic plan. We'd like a recommendation. We've had 2 interviews so far with 2 companies. The last company that we just interviewed was fantastic because they've done a lot of college towns and that are similar to us, which was interesting. We have 1 more interview next week, and then we'll make our recommendation to the council. They're hoping to have the project kicked off in November and have the plan done within 18 months. Last Friday, we celebrated Penn State's Whiteout weekend with an employee appreciation tailgate. We had the ice cream truck come, and we got all kinds of great food, but it's not great for you from Wegmans, and our employees seem to really enjoy that, so that was a fun event for us. And I told Casey, our receptionist, that she's going to be the official chair of our employee appreciation committee now, because she loves planning stuff, so she's going to plan parties. I'm up to be reappointed to the PML board. I don't think that you guys have any objection to that. It's fun sitting with all the mayors from all these other places, and I get to learn more things, and then there's all kinds of legislation and things I get to learn about, and it's not a lot of my time, so it's another 2-year term. Engineering, planning, and zoning, we had the zoning hearing board. We approved a variance for a couple out on Shadow Lane who wants to build an addition onto their house. And we did our open space tour, and Betsy can attest that I survived being in nature. I'm not a big fan, and I survived on the hike. It was also very interesting. We learned a lot about the Scotia Barrens, which was neat.
She did great, by the way.
Until Ken pointed out the toad, and then I was done.
Oh, but every time I would see a flower that was new to me, and I would go, oh, and then Amy would jump. She said, you know what? She thought I saw another toad. Or so I tried to tone it down.
Yeah. And then just a couple of updates from our parks. We had our parks tour last week, which was phenomenal. Our parks are amazing. Burnell Road, if you haven't been out to Burnell Road, go out to Burnell Road and check out the pump track that we're putting in for the mountain biking. We're putting in the fit court. They're going to be coming to do that soon. The whole front of the park is being transformed. It's phenomenal. The disc golf, we just had some renovations done to the course to cut back some of the fairways and make it a little bit easier. We're moving a couple of the fair boxes around, which is great. Scotia Road, we're still working on that shared use path connector. We're working on the right-of-way acquisition. We had a resident along that way who contacted us with some concerns, and we met with her and trying to address those concerns to move that project along. Same with Douglas Drive. That's still sort of a moving target, but we're trying to get that connector done. Gaynor Drive, we went out, the fencing that we showed you pictures of looks phenomenal. The parks tour, we went on part of that. We're going to put some additional benches and things out there, but that parklet looks great. Also on the tour, we stopped at Oakwood Park, and they need a new piece of play equipment to replace a piece that's out there. And I don't know if people appreciate the process that we go through, but Susan has a process where they actually send out a survey to the residents of the neighborhood to find out, and it's a very targeted survey, to find out what kinds of things they'd like to see in their parks, so that our parks really are reflective of the residents that live around them, which I think is phenomenal, because most places don't do that. So we're very fortunate to have Susan and our rec committee. They're fantastic. So that's that, and Tyler will be super mad if I don't mention this. Saturday is the Children's Safeties Fair at Target in the parking lot, so we hope that you will all stop by. And Tyler, if you want to say anything about that?
And I also did want to thank Leslie, because in her presentation, she had pictures from last year's that I believe that I provided her, so
Yes.
that was fantastic. So just a little shameless plug there, but yeah, this Saturday, September 30th, from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m., the 21st annual Patton Township Children's Safety Fair. Got confirmation the state police helicopter's coming, but a lot of businesses from our community paired up with the Happy Valley Business Association. We have a great working relationship with them. A bunch of first responders, police, fire, EMS will be out there. Again, it's for the young and young at heart, so anybody is welcome, and we hope to have a great attendance. It looks like it's going to be a nice day, weather-wise, too. So we're really looking forward to it. Target parking lot between Target and Kohl's is our normal spot. We'll be there this Saturday, so looking forward to it.
Okay, and with that, I'm done.
All right, then we're up to committee reports.
I will just note, Mr. Erickson, our former manager, is now our CCMPO Technical Committee rep, and he submitted a report, very detailed report. I'm very appreciative of that. There were some things I pointed out to Dan for the Finance Committee discussion on the CCMPO budget.
And when is the MPO meeting? Because I haven't seen anything about it.
Do not know.
I think it was,
Oh, it was?
yeah, it just was last week. I think that's right.
Okay, that answers that. Are there any other business items?
So I just want to note, I don't have a climate committee report, but I do have a climate report. It turns out that the house on Shadow Lane, which is around the corner from us, that wants to put on a wing, it turns out that last week there was a person on a bicycle who stopped when I was out mowing the lawn. He seemed to want to talk to me, and he said, "We're putting a wing on a house in Shadow Lane." He says, "We want to put solar on it." So I'm guessing it's the same person. It's very exciting how that.
Oh, nice.
So he stopped and asked, so now I know where that he's official and his request for a wing. It should have solar on it, if it's appropriate. Anyway.
Any other business? Is there a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Yay.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. 7:55.